Welcome to another edition of Spotlight. Today's Spotlight is on New York District 14. This District 14 has become famous because of one of its current representative, AOC, has instantly become famous for her Green New Deal and other aspects. New York District 14 has 51% male and then 49% female, 46.5% whites, 11.4% blacks, and 16.5% Asians. Unemployment rate is approximately around 10%. High school diploma is 75%, while college graduates are 25%. So this is the picture of New York District 11. From this district, John Cummings from Republican Party is challenging Ocasio-Cortez. John Cummings was born and raised in Bronx. He followed his father's footsteps and was sworn in as a NYPD officer in 1983. He was assigned to NSU 7 in the South Bronx. After suffering serious injury while assigned to NYPD Harbor Unit, he was forced to retire in 1991 with multiple commendations for bravery and excellence in the line of duty. Following his retirement, he earned a degree from Fordham University and later became father to his two sons. He later returned to his high school alma mater as a history and government teacher, where he just completed his 22nd year. Let's welcome John. Welcome, John. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Our campaign is going quite well. We started all the way back in July of 2019.
Wow.
Really a marathon. And now we're down to the last 3 weeks. So now we're into sprint mode, but it's going extremely well. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are taking on somebody who has been undue coverage by media and things like that. How does it feel that you are heading on with somebody who is regarded as socialistic, spearheading socialism?
I think it's really made our approach quite simple. Our views are so completely different on what the role of government is that there's really not a lot of gray area. And I think for someone who's new to politics like I am, I've never run for political office before. I was a school teacher for 22 years and I was a police officer before that. I think that our political differences have, like I said, allowed us to stick to the issues. It has not gotten personal, and that was my intent from the beginning. I don't think there's any reason for any campaign to get personal. And this one has allowed for it not to, simply because our contrast is quite apparent. We have a completely different view of what the role of government is. So far I've been sticking to that, and we've been very successful with that.
What made you to think running as Republican against AOC and now?
Well, I am a Republican, so I decided to run on the Republican line. But I think the reason that we have this opportunity to be as successful as we've been, and I think we will win, is that this is a heavily Democrat district, but it's not a heavily socialist district. There are many, many Democrats who live in this district who are union people. They have good health insurance. They have good 401ks. They don't want fewer police. They want job opportunities. They appreciate the free market. And they're all things that really line up with what I see the role of government as being. And people have been very receptive to that message. We haven't really, like I said, staked out that issue that it's Republican against Democrat. This election is far more liberty versus socialism and freedom versus big government than anything else.
Education and then school choice. Do you support the present government's proposal about school choice and how it is going to help increase the standards in the schools?
I'm a big proponent of both charter schools and vouchers. I taught in a Catholic school for 22 years, so I see the need for people of a lower income to escape failing schools. That's been generational now, where you have people, particularly in the inner city, particularly minorities, who have their children stuck in failing schools. They really have no way out of the school because they lack the economic viability to get out. So I would be in favor of any school choice program, charter schools, vouchers. For example, in the school that I taught in, 40% of our students live in the poorest congressional district in the United States. It's an 88% minority population in the school. We graduate 99% of our students with a full Regents diploma in 4 years, and we have 100% college acceptance for those who apply. The public schools simply don't have that record. And
Mhm.
you add to that the fact that the public school in New York City spends $25,000 per pupil, and our tuition is under 8,000. There's a big issue there, and I would certainly be for vouchers, perhaps giving voucher to a lower income family of $10,000. Not only would you give the parents choice and an opportunity to get their child out of a failing school, but you would also save the taxpayer $15,000 per student,
Mhm.
and you could certainly aim that money at other issues.
Because of the school choice, or the public school are going to cease to exist, or they will increase their standards.
Oh, not at all. I think competition is always the best thing.
Mhm.
The thing with public education, particularly in the inner city, is that they have monopolies
Mhm.
and they don't have to compete. If they needed to compete with charter schools and more private schools, which is the way it used to be, by the way. When I was growing up, the Catholic schools, the local private schools, they competed with the public schools. It was really a competition. That's a good thing. Children were trying to educate themselves. Their parents were trying to find the best schools for them, and the public schools were excellent. And there are still some excellent public schools. I just think that choice is good, competition is good, and really the bottom line is you need to provide opportunity for young people to escape poverty, and the best way to do that is through education. Education is the great equalizer, and it should be the civil rights issue of the 21st century.
And why you think that you made a statement that public schools are failing in educating properly? Why are they failing now in this present system, John?
Well, some of them are, and some are good. We have some very good public schools in this congressional district in 14, but there are many that fail. I think a lot of it in New York City in particular has to do with the fact that the system is simply too big. It's all bureaucracy. You have 1.1 million students in the New York City public school system. I mean, that's bigger than most cities' populations. So when you have a system that is that big, it has to be managed from the top down, and you end up with this levels of bureaucracy. And when I said that they spend $25,000 per student, that money never gets to the students and the teachers. It's all tied up in bureaucracy. I had always thought, as someone who's been in New York City my entire life, I had always thought that they would be much better served if they broke the school system down into boroughs and let each borough manage their own, group of schools. I don't think that'll ever happen. It was certainly something I would like to see happen, but it's not a federal issue. But I would certainly use my voice to try to push something like that.
Thank you. About the economy, do you align with Trump's free market, less governance, less regulations, and to create a conducive atmosphere for everybody to thrive and prosper?
Yeah, I really believe that is the role of the government, is to basically, you need to set an environment or an atmosphere where people can succeed. And the best way to do that is through deregulation and low taxes. The government has a role in the free market, and that's to make sure that things are fair and that there is competition. Other than that, they really need to step aside and let the people operate within the free market. That's what provides the most opportunities. And of course, to go back to our last subject, it goes hand in hand with education. If the educational system is producing people who understand that whole concept, they will try to enter into the free market, they will work harder, and they will produce, and that's good for everybody.
Okay. Do you agree that Trump's policies have created more jobs than any other president's policies? Why I'm asking this question is I have recently seen Obama's tweet that during Corona, whether he put it as Trump's administration has lost 4 million jobs. Your comment on this one, please.
Yeah, I know that's something that the Democrats are pushing, that the jobs were lost under President Trump. But obviously, before the coronavirus hit, that was the best economy that we had seen in a very, very, very long time. I mean, unemployment was 3.5%. Unemployment was record low across the boards with every ethnic, racial, and gender group. The stock market was flourishing. People's 401ks were doing tremendously well. And then the virus hit. And even with that, the Trump administration has added back a very, very high percentage of the jobs. I think that the finishing touches will be when we reopen the cities and reopen the economy. And I think we'll end up right back where we were, and then even better.
Coming back to maybe your own field where you worked, apart from school education, law and order, why AOC and de Blasio and then governor They're so obsessed over unleashing criminals onto streets by weird policies, which will not help the citizens anyway.
It really doesn't help anybody. You're right. And I firmly believe that all of this is completely aimed at eliminating the middle class. I think they want to undermine the middle class. What the socialist left really wants to do is they want to have a dependent class and the upper class. And of course, they would be the upper class. But if you look at the constant undermining of the rule of law, whether it's the open border crowd to sanctuary cities, to bail reform, to defund the police, to undermine everything that local law enforcement does, it's aimed at creating chaos and uncertainty. And uncertainty undermines the economy locally. And you see people's home values go down. It's killing the economy here in New York City. People are afraid to go out. Does policing need reform? Policing always needs reform because society always changes. But the idea that you can do that with fewer officers and less money is mindless. If you really want reform, you're going to have to keep the budget, put the budget back to where it was, maybe introduce some new techniques, which they always do, maybe increase the number of body cams that are out there. I'm all for that. Everybody's for better policing. But as far as having fewer police and undermining the rule of law, you see what happens. It becomes lawlessness and it simply doesn't work.
Defund means defund. The boss says, and then mayor approves it, and then he reduced the police funding by $1 billion. What is the effect of reduction of funding by $1 billion in New York City, sir?
Oh, it's had a terrible effect. When I was in law enforcement, my last full year in New York City Police Department was 1990. 5% of the city's budget went to law enforcement back then, only 5%. And when you think about that, the government's main job is to maintain social order. That's their number one job. And they're only spending 5%. So that really shows you, what their approach is. Back then, 2,245 murders, 146,000 stolen cars, 100,000 robberies. New York City was a near disaster. So Mayor Giuliani came in, followed by Mayor Bloomberg. They got the percentage of the budget up to 8%. And you saw the difference. You got down to 295 murders instead of 2,245 murders. That's an unbelievable change. Nobody ever thought it would happen, and it did. And then you have this new approach because you have people that have come into office and said, well, we have the safest large city. Why do we have all these police? Instead of realizing that the reason you have the safest large city is because you have enough police and they do a very, very solid job. So now they've decreased the budget to 6% and they'd like to see it go down to 3%. And some people like my opponent, Congressman Ocasio-Cortez, would like to eliminate the police completely. Mm-hmm. They asked her, well, what would New York City be like if you eliminated the police? And she said the suburbs. Mm-hmm. And I just shook my head. I don't know how to respond to something like that. Someone who I know what it's like to get into that uniform and go out and protect people. It's difficult.
It is beyond our imagination to think a society without police. I do not know who they are trying to please, these democratic leaders, by unleashing criminals onto streets. Can you explain us why they want to do it? If they make the society as a utopian society, probably at that point of time they can eliminate police. But
yeah, and everything. It's so contradictory. Everything that they do. I mean, the people that they claim that they want to help, which is predominantly the minority community in the inner city. I'll give you a great example. In the first half of 2020, from January 1st to June 30th, there were 519 more shootings in New York City than last year. 95% of the victims were people of color. 95%. So who are you hurting by defunding the police? The very people that you claim you want to help. And believe me, I'm on the street. I'm in the communities every day. I go out and talk to the people who are voting in this election. They do not want fewer police. They want more police. They love the presence. They love that safe feeling. And now that they've had to put their children back on the street to go to school, they really feel the difference.
Are these people going to do anything on black crime? They're not speaking anything about that.
It's really a difficult thing to talk about. People don't want to talk about it, but I talk about it with people every day in the street. I mean, I just go out there and they freely discuss the fact that they are afraid to be out in the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods are dominated by people that look like them. And they favor the police, but they're almost afraid to say it.
Mhm.
And that's really, I think that's really the shame of the entire discussion, is that nobody wants to address the issue. And that is just crime in general. And of course, the bail reform has been disastrous, absolutely disastrous for communities in urban areas in New York State. It's not just New York City. You have other cities in this state as well. And just this revolving door justice system, people who've been arrested 4, 5, 6 times since January 1st for violent felonies, walking right back out the door and committing these same crimes. Just horrible.
Yeah, one of your visions are the things that you are going to take up if you are elected. You said that you are going to bring back Amazon, which AOC threw out. So how is that going to be possible?
Yeah, I don't know if we could bring back that particular project, but certainly you have to create the environment, like I said earlier, where businesses want to come to New York. And I don't think we have that environment. I've heard people speak about that at length, that this mayor and the governor also, they have created a situation where people don't want to invest in New York City. And the crime that we just spoke about has just made it worse. That the high taxation, the overregulation, and then high crime. Why would anybody want to invest? And you have to flip the script there. You have to make it attractive. I think the one thing about the Amazon deal that really gets understated all the time is that Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio were for that deal.
Mhm.
They were for giving Amazon that break, that incentive to come here. That tells you that they know that corporate tax is too high. They know it, because otherwise they wouldn't have had to offer Amazon that. But my thing is always, if you offer Amazon that break, well, guess what? That means that break should be available for Joe's hardware store or anybody who wants to open a business. It shouldn't just be Amazon. It should be everybody across the board gets that same incentive to come here.
Contingent upon it, I have seen recent FEC filings of the donations received by you versus AOC. And it is amazing or surprising to see a lot of these companies are funding a lot to her. Whereas I think you are receiving through most of the local people and things like that. Why would the big corporates support AOC when they're making not so conducive rules, and while Trump is struggling hard to protect them in international markets?
It is a great question. I think part of it's personal. I think part of it is that people just don't like the president's personality, which really, shouldn't be part of the equation in the grand scheme of things, but it is. I think the other thing too is that, look, the president has taken a very hard stance on China, a very hard stance on China, and probably the hardest stance that anybody's taken on China. And let's be honest, a lot of these businesses depend on China for a lot of what they do, particularly Amazon. A lot of the products that they sell come from China. And I think that's a big part of it. I really do. I think that's why they're thinking that they need to throw in with the Democrats. Now, of course, supporting Democrats and supporting socialists is two different things. There's a split in that party, and we see it every day. Former Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are on there saying that they won't ban fracking after they said they would ban fracking. So there's a big split there. And I wonder if that's going to hurt them in the general election. At least I hope it will.
Do you believe the statement made by Biden during presidential debate, Democratic Party is me and I am Democratic Party, while the statement there being overrun by far left and then socialistic Democrats?
No, I don't. When you look at the platform that is on their website, it's completely different than what Vice President Biden espouses. It's two different things. That's because the socialist left is basically taken over the Democrat Party, and he goes out and talks about what he used to talk about when he was running for vice president with President Obama. It's two completely different things, especially as we talked about on the fracking issue. He has said clearly now, and so has Senator Harris, that they will not ban fracking, after in the past saying they would, but they know they can't go into these states, particularly Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas. They can't get any traction if they want to ban fracking in those states. So basically they contradict themselves constantly.
About the Second Amendment and then your views.
I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think that there are a few things in the Constitution that are more clear. It's interesting that in this district, up until recently, it really wasn't much of an issue. People felt safe. People didn't feel the need to defend themselves. And now suddenly people come to me every day when I'm out campaigning and say, how do I legally get a gun in New York City? And the answer is, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. People feel the need to defend themselves. They have the constitutional right to defend themselves. And I think it should be far more simple to get a legal firearm around the country than it is, especially in cities.
Well, I understand this thing. Like you may have seen the St. Louis couple when they were trying to protect their property and themselves, their guns were confiscated by the local government there, and then they are being prosecuted. How do you react on this one, John?
I really think it's outrageous. I mean, that case is strictly political, and politics have no place in the law. You know, the rule of law is supposed to be applied evenly. There were people at that protest, I've seen the videos, that had guns themselves. They were on private property. They were never arrested and prosecuted. These two people who were legal gun owners and were defending their property have been prosecuted. Now, I know that the state attorney general, or rather the governor rather, has already said that he would pardon them if they were convicted. It should have never gone this far. Those people's rights are being violated. I'm surprised the federal government hasn't stepped in yet. I know they're hesitant to do that, but I'm surprised they haven't stepped in yet and said, look, you're violating these people's rights. This case needs to be thrown out.
We would like to definitely know about your views on immigration and then other related issues, John.
Immigration is something that it's amazing. This country was built by people who come here looking for an opportunity. And yet the laws are broken. The system has been broken for many years, and Congress continues to just kick the can down the road to the next Congress, both Republicans and Democrats. They haven't worked on it in years. I think simply what we need to do is secure the border. Everything has to start with securing the border. There's no sense passing meaningful legislation on immigration unless the border is secure. Secure the border and then set up a system where people can come, both merit-based. I think that's important. And also, I think we need to make sure that people who are coming here have somewhere to go. I know when my grandparents came here from Italy on my mother's side, and my father's mother came from Ireland, they both had to put down where they were going and who they were going to, relatives and a house. I have the ship's manifest from 1900 when my grandfather came, and there was an address as to where they were going and who they were going to. I think that's very important that we come up with a system like that. But obviously, it's very important to our economy. We need the best and the brightest here. That's why we are who we are. We've always attracted the best and the brightest people to come to this country. But there needs to be immigration reform. There's no doubt about that, but it has to start with securing the border.
How do people know which kind of legal immigration or illegal immigration, which is best for the country? The reason I am asking this question is you must have observed that in before 2018 representative elections, AOC has just visited the border, and then she visited the people who are contained there. And then she made a big issue about kids that were held back by immigration authorities, and their ratings went up. So she tried to play on the sentiments of the people at that point of time, and then she took the primary. She won the primary thereafter. So how do you make people understand this issue of legal immigration and illegal immigration, which is good for the country?
Yeah, I know also that the Congresswoman wants to abolish ICE, which is really, it goes back to undermining the rule of law again. I was reading that the ICE agents made 270,000 arrests and removals last year. 91% of them, 91% of the people arrested and removed either had criminal records or had been charged with a crime. So it's not like they're out there just trying to find families to throw out. They concentrate on illegal activity and also drugs at the border, which is a big thing. I think everybody understands that the issue of the border is extremely difficult. I also think that people need to understand, and I think the administration, the Trump administration, needs to do a better job of making sure that people understand that by constructing the border, you don't have the amount of people that get here illegally and then get apprehended and end up in that situation. You know, the famous pictures of the cages that were actually put there by the Obama administration and not the Trump administration.
Yes, probably that did not go to the public as it should have been.
Yeah, and I mean, those are human tragedies. There are, but when the border was overwhelmed like that, you're going to have overcrowding. Once you establish a secure border, you're not going to have that problem. And I think you know this as you travel around the world. You can even stay in this hemisphere or go to Europe or you go anywhere. People have secure borders. It's pretty difficult to get from one country to another as you move around, and that's the way it's supposed to be. That's what having a sovereign nation is all about.
What are the failures of incumbent congresswomen, and then how you are planning to fix if you are elected, John?
Well, one of the big things, the main issue that I'm encountering as I make my way around the district is that she's not here. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has done a great job of creating this national persona for herself. She is everywhere, but here in the district. Last year, I marched in the Veterans Day Parade here in the district in Throgs Neck in the Bronx. It's a very big event. It honors our veterans, which we should always do. And she was in Iowa campaigning with Bernie Sanders. You know, you need to be attuned to the district. She also does not have a dedicated office in the Bronx, part of the district. The Bronx is 35% of the district, and Queens is 65% of the district. She never opened an office here, and she's completely out of touch with what's going on in the district. I have lived and or worked in this district for 60 years, and it's one of the reasons I got in. I saw a need. I am a person of service. I have a 30-year record of service to the people of New York City, and I gladly put that up against her record of service for the last 2 years.
Okay, I respect your statement initially that you don't want to go on any persons or personalities. You are fighting on policies. But I would like to ask a question. You may say reserve right to not to answer the question. Do you think that AOC has been overrated by Republicans and then Democrats as well as the media? Go ahead.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Is she overrated by media, Republicans and Democrats?
Yeah, they've done it. Like I said, they've done a tremendous job of creating this national persona for herself. So you have the people on the far left that really appreciate her. And of course, she gets beat up by the right all the time. Obviously in the media. And that's the nature of the business when you create a persona that's that large. That said, and I said this before, she's not that popular with moderate Democrats. You know, she wants, as I said, she wants to ban private health insurance. A lot of people in this district are very happy with the health insurance plans that they have, and they gave up raises over a series of contracts so that they could have that. They're very happy with their 401ks. They don't want to ban charter schools. They don't want to defund the police. So she's alienated a great deal of her party that is more moderate, and I am attracting those voters. In spite of the fact that I'm Republican, I have talked to so many people on this campaign that have said to me, I've never voted for a Republican before, but I'm going to this year. And that's been very gratifying.
Okay, thank you. About this Green New Deal and then President's erstwhile statement of global warming is a hoax, two extremes. Okay, where are you about global warming and then Green New Deal?
I think climate change is definitely an issue. I don't know how much we have to do with it. I think sometimes it's very self-centered of us to think that we can control what goes on in the earth. It's only been here for, I don't know how many billions of years, and we think we can control it. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't maintain our environment and improve it as much as we can. I think that's a great thing. Just for example, in this district, we have a lot of waterways. There's the Long Island Sound, we have the East River and everything. And like I said, I grew up here. The water is unbelievably clean compared to what it was when I was a child. And we've done a great job with that. I think that something like the Green New Deal, which is strictly government mandates, that's the two most dangerous words in the English language are government mandates. That means that the government is telling you what to do and they don't work. That entire Green New Deal would bankrupt this country in short order. Two, I think that trying to do something like that is best addressed through the free market. Again, if the people want to improve the environment, they will do so. They will demand it, and the free market will produce it. Entrepreneurs, scientists, inventors, they will come up with the next best thing that will help improve the environment. You see it now with the improvements of electric cars. There's different types of natural gas that we have. I know that they've looked at hydrogen cars. The one thing that we don't look at anymore, which I'm still surprised at, is nuclear energy. Around the world, people are very, very successful with it. It obviously reduces the carbon footprint if that's what you're looking to do. But I always think that the free market is the best way to attack things like that. The people will let the government know we want these changes, but we want to do it ourselves through the free market.
Okay, as a history lecturer, a lecturer in one of the schools, and then how do you react to the statement of President Trump about people are being indoctrinated in the schools and colleges
It's
against the
definitely,
American values?
yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely a big issue, and I've seen it over the years, in particular in the textbooks. I'm a high school history teacher by trade, and when you go back to the Common Core issue that happened in the last decade, I know most parents were very upset about the math. They called it the new math. They couldn't do the math, and everybody got hung up on the math. And meanwhile, the textbook companies, which are dominated by the left, rewrote the history books, completely rewrote them, particularly American history. They did it in world history too. They tend to leave out the past, so you don't really understand why we ended up where we ended up. And they create a built-in bias in these books towards the United States. They don't talk about American exceptionalism. They don't talk about why we're the greatest country. They don't talk about why people come here for opportunity. They just concentrate on all of the quote unquote bad things that we've done as a society. Are we perfect? No, but even in the preamble of the Constitution, it says right up front, in order to create a more perfect union, meaning they knew that we weren't going to get there. They just wanted to be going in the right direction. So you work on it all the time. But yeah, I agree with that idea that the president has stated, that we really need to look at the education system, and I think it has to start with the textbooks. Some of them are just horrendous. I'll give you a great example, if I may, really quickly. What they've done with the American history textbooks is they've pretty much eliminated the colonial period.
Okay.
They spend maybe one chapter on the colonial period, and the colonial period really establishes why we have what we have. You know, what happened, how did the framers look at the colonial period? How did they create the Constitution based on what they went through under the British rule? They've completely eliminated that. So they basically started the French and Indian War and go on. So there's really no background as to why we have the Constitution, why we have the Bill of Rights, why they included the things in the Bill of Rights. You have to understand the entirety of it. Otherwise, you're never going to get it. And they've gone to great lengths to eliminate that. It really hurts the education system as a whole.
I have been immigrated to this country from India a while ago, some 20 years back. When I was a kid, like about 40 years ago, most of our dream is to immigrate to America. And then recently I keep getting calls from my brother. The situation looks to be not so very well. There is a lot of looting and violence we have been seeing in TVs. Why you guys are hanging around there? We are well off here. Why don't you come back? So this is the kind of the mindset that is being sent to countries like ours, I mean, my former country. So basically, yeah, I definitely wanted to be in a country which is far more safer. So what kind of changes in the law, or what kind of resolutions that you may pass to